a little bit of your background in the film industry and the position you're in now and how you kind of got there.
Well, yeah. So I guess my journey to where I am right now is that the first fortuitous event was that I failed organic chemistry. I wanted to be a forest ranger, and it didn't go too well. So I went into journalism and radio TV. Ended up being a pretty decent writer and communicator. Got those skills down, and started working at ad agencies. And one of my biggest clients, after a couple of years, was Paramount Pictures, and they asked me to come over and help them do advertising from the client side instead of on the agency side. And I've been doing that for, I don't know, like a million years, something like a million years, and having a really good time. The cool thing for me, the very lucky thing I get to do is the last couple of years I've been doing it as a distance worker and going to the office a little bit less. So I spend a lot of time in Montana, where I met the Audience Awards crew and fell in love with them and their project. And then I go down to the office and work with them, and that has not gotten old. It's gotten even more fun for me. I think, people always talk about finding something that you love to do and just doing that, and I don't know if that's even really always possible. It's hard to kind of love what you do every day, but you might love at least something about the challenge. For me, it's cracking the riddle of the value proposition of movies. So when we think about how we market movies and what I spend most of my time doing every day, it's trying to figure out what's that high level need that we satisfy in our customers. What does a movie do to them? It's never the plot, it's not the cast. It's always something that it makes them feel or understand or connect with the zeitgeist, and trying to really figure out what that is, divine it in each movie, and then bring that to life in advertising has been, despite the drawbacks of the hours and the years and the wrinkles, it's been a really fun thing to be involved with for a couple decades.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. I have a few questions that we also have somebody raising their hand. So I'm going to promote them. I'm going to finish my question and then you can answer theirs as well.
Great.
But my question to you is just, my first question is basically, can you talk a little bit about what is successful in marketing? Like what really resonates with people and what you have found doesn't always work for marketing films?
That's a huge question, and if we understood the answer to that, we'd save a lot of money and a lot of time, and there'd be no flops. So I don't think anyone can ever give you a perfect answer for that, but we tend to do better when we keep it simple. And with movies, keeping it simple is trying to bring to life that main character and trying to make it interesting to audiences what they're trying to accomplish. I mean, when you really think of the essence of almost all movies that are commercial movies, they tend to have a character you connect with or understand or get under the skin of, even if you hate them, and you understand what they're trying to do. They're going on a journey, and yeah, maybe there's robots, or maybe it's a love story, or maybe they're dancing, but something about them and what they're trying to accomplish makes sense to you. So usually we succeed not when we make it complicated, but when we make it simple. And I think that's a good lesson for all marketing. And when you think about, whether it's selling Nike shoes or whether it's selling hamburgers or whether it's selling anything, it's like they all have their different rules, but they almost all succeed based on being simple.
Nice. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeremy. So my question is, how do you keep the stories that you tell with advertising for these movies from being formulaic and have each one be authentic to the movie that it's promoting?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because especially in the era we live in right now, if you look at the top 10 movies last year, 7 of 10 were known intellectual property and 3 of 10 were new ideas. So people tend to show up for things that they kind of already are a little bit invested in. So you want to give people generally what we call an on-ramp, give them a way to sort of connect with it and understand what it looks like and feels like and how it relates maybe to things that came before in entertainment, but also somehow give them that special sauce that says it's not like they've seen it before. So it's a little bit like a comfortable sweater. An audience should be able to know how to put it on and know what it's going to feel like, but it shouldn't be something they've worn their whole life and seen a million times. There's not really a great formula to just sort of spell that out, but you kind of know it when you see it, and you got to keep your eye on it. I've worked on a fair amount of movies where we try to show all the original things and what's fresh and what's new, and the audience gets lost. And sometimes we tell them just why it's like another movie that they liked before, and they get bored. And you got to find that place in the middle where there's enough where they understand the archetype. Maybe they have a little head start on understanding like maybe what it's going to feel like, what the arc of it and the sweep of it is, but they think it's going to be a fresh, original journey on that same sort of kind of path. So every movie is its own challenge, and more that is a challenge, like writ large and macro in movie marketing, is how do you fit in that world where 7 out of 10 of the biggest movies are remakes, reboots, known intellectual property, but also not be boring and feel like something people have seen before. Yeah, tough question. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks.
Thanks for
Sure.
the question. Anybody else, feel free to jump on too. I'm gonna move you. Jeremy, we have a lot of independent filmmakers and indie filmmakers on the Audience Awards, and
Yeah.
I was curious what kind of advice you give to them if they don't have, per se, the Paramount budget, but what can you tell them to think about in terms of marketing from maybe pre-production all the way through to post? Right.
Yeah. So the big difference between, a big studio movie and an independent movie, whether it's publicity or marketing, is a studio movie uses sort of paid awareness or paid interest, and an indie has to earn it, right? So you've got to be special enough when you're independent and tell a great story so that you find people out in the world that just want to tell your story and they're not getting paid to. So it's a longer road. It's a different set of sort of skills. So for a contrast, like at Paramount, like we have a big movie opening right now. It's Transformers. It's opening everywhere in the world. It's on tens of thousands of screens, and we're spending tens of millions of dollars to get attention and interest in it, right? So if you can't do that, and you probably don't want to, you want to do something special that's true to you. Like that's, if you're an independent filmmaker, you don't want to make Transformers. You want to make something else. So, but you still have to find a way to captivate an audience. And usually I think that's what's the special sauce. What is finding that DNA at the very center, the core of your movie, and never losing sight of that. Don't get lost in the scenes, don't get lost in the production, don't get lost in the cast. There's one reason that you as a filmmaker were attracted to that property, and that you somehow got a great editor and a great actor and a great bunch of people to get involved. There's that one thing at the center. And usually if you figure out what that is and you find a way to do compelling PR around that, or find brand ambassadors, or find partners who are sort of in alignment on the issue you're dancing with in your story, then you can get that interest in that earned media and not the paid media. But it's usually, how do you find that one zeitgeisty, special, human, whatever like lever you're going to pull? What's that one thing at the center that makes you different from everything and makes, and the cool thing about independent films is it's not like Transformers or Pirates of the Caribbean or any other. You don't have to have everybody show up in the first 2 weeks. You can roll it out. So if you look at the movies that did well, and they're kind of borderline between major movies and indies, but like the Moonlights, the La La Lands last year, those movies, they go out into the market like theater by theater, city by city, person by person, festival by festival. It's a long road, and you come up with a timeline on how you're going to tell your story, and it doesn't have to be all things to all people. You really just need to find those first people that are going to fall in love and share that with their friends and share that with their readers. And it always is about, in my opinion, that one little thing at the center of your story and not getting distracted by everything else. Find the best way to communicate that one thing at the middle of your story.
That's great. We have a written question from Remy for you. Do you have a lot of movie directors telling you and your team how the movie has to be marketed?
Oh my God. Of course we do. So yeah, so I think one of the cool things about about what we do that I think is hard to see from the outside is the level of creative collaboration that goes into things. You know, when you look at a trailer or a poster or a TV commercial, you think, oh yeah, some guy sat in a room and made that. They pulled the best scenes, they threw it together. But it's never that simple. There's a lot of voices. So when you think of the stakeholders involved in any movie, there's going to be the creative people, the director, the writer, the actors. Then there's going to be the producers who are the business side. There might be a financier who paid for the project before it even came to the studio. All those people get a voice, and it's not like I don't want to hear their voices. Those are people that really know what's special about that film, and I definitely want to hear their thoughts. The challenge becomes they don't always agree, and they don't always agree with us. And I might have a research company telling me to sell it one way, and focus groups telling me another, and my boss or colleagues telling me something. So how we solve all these different voices is we try a lot of different ideas. So if you see a TV commercial, we didn't just cut one, we cut 100. We didn't just test 2, we tested 50. If you see a poster, we didn't just sit down and say, this is the poster, and someone drew it. We did 1,000. So we try a lot of things, and we keep that group engaged, all those different stakeholders, and we do a lot of research and a lot of, anecdotal. We show things to people and say, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And by the end, hopefully, we've built enough consensus that everyone kind of is comfortable with the campaign we go out with. But then, even then, we're listening to the marketplace. So on any given weekend, there's a fair number of movies, and we may not have predicted the popularity of a competing movie with an audience that we thought was ours. So we may have to tack a little to the right or a little to the left. We may have to find some females for a movie we thought was male, some families for something we thought was older. You know, there's never a moment where you say pencils down, we figured it out, until 2 weeks after the movie's open, and then then it's done. But up until then, we're trying and iterating every single day.
Great. And feel free, I know a lot of you have questions out there. I have another one for you, Jeremy. How soon do you get on board? I mean, when do they start contacting you about this kind of promotion?
Oh, yeah. So the ideal time to start is well before the movie goes in front of the cameras. And that is for a lot of reasons. One, we want to have an uncluttered space where we have a little time to hang out with the filmmakers and talk with them about what they believe the film really is, what they're planning for it that they think is special, what's the special sauce between the lines of the script that we need to know about. Then we also want to tell them our thoughts. And our thoughts, it's very important to sort of make a distinction. Like, I would never tell a filmmaker how to make a film. That's not what I do. Filmmakers should make films, and they're amazing at it, and I don't know how they do it, and they're like magicians to me. I still love movies. I don't know how they do it. But I would want to tell a filmmaker if I thought that there was a great story in their movie that was very marketable, but that there were not scenes that clearly articulated that story. And that if they were going along in production, they might want to consider for their filmmaking and also for our marketing, what are the elements that we have access to that might help me market their amazing film? So getting involved sooner is great. One, because we build this relationship and collaboration with our filmmakers before they're in the crazy mayhem of shooting the film. But also then as a strategist, not just someone who's sitting around cutting spots and making things, but someone who's thinking about, like, where does this fit in the sort of cultural world that we have to try to find a niche for it. It's always great in any creative endeavor when you have time to measure twice and cut once, which is the old sort of, cabinetry metaphor, right? So if you can meet with filmmakers and have a really good grip on what they're doing, and then go and think about the marketplace at the time the movies plan to come out, like go out and research and watch a bunch of movies that have come out that are similar, that are comp movies, and really get yourself steeped in, like, where this movie is going to fit in the world before you actually get the assets to start working. Do some thinking before you start cutting. That I got to say, is like someone who's dabbled in all kinds of creative things, like even writing a book, I don't really trust the process where you just sit down and start writing and just hope that 80,000 words later it's all going to be coherent. I think you got to sit down and kind of measure out like who's who in the book and how the chapters fit together and where this journey is going. And maybe it doesn't have to be, a totally snug outline, but the thinking ahead is usually what makes great creative happen.
Awesome. And Drew, I put you on the spot there. Sorry about that. It popped up.
Hey, Drew.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Drew, do you mind asking your question, Jeremy?
Sure, yeah. I just was curious a little bit more about what you mean by brand ambassadors. If you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so, well, if you're talking about an independent film, you want to have people that are out there working on your behalf, being cheerleaders for what you've created. So in kind of traditional marketing, sometimes you get phone ringing, boss calling, have to call him back. Sometimes you get, like if you're doing Red Bull, you get a car that says Red Bull and you get a bunch of people to take Red Bull to a party. But when you're doing a movie, you want advocates for that movie to start building awareness online and start talking in the film community about what you're doing, so that when you actually come out in more and more cities, you're not starting from the first space on the checkerboard, right? So a brand ambassador, like that's a loose term that could mean a lot of things. So I would say in film, you want film fans to love it. You want like hundreds and hundreds of people who come out of screenings to write their own little reviews and use the hashtag of your movie and build some buzz. You want to get a couple reviewers who you've maybe talked to ahead of time and brought them in and said, here's what we're doing, and you liked some things by this filmmaker before, or you're a big fan of this actress. Get them on board and tell them that how much one good review could make a difference in your film. Get bloggers. Bring them to the set of your film. Have them be advocates. So especially if you're working in genre film, if you're doing a film about Native Americans, if you're doing a film that's sci-fi, if you're doing a film that's women's issues, find the thought leaders in those areas and bring them under your tent as early as possible. Tell them you're going to make this film and how much it would mean if they would come to the set and read the script and talk to you. Get them to be spokesmen for the amazing thing that you're trying to do. Because again, like we talked about a couple questions ago, if you're indie and you're low budget, you can't buy your way to an opening. You have to have help. You have to have people out there plugging away for you every day, telling the rest of the world how special what you're doing is and why they should go see it.
Jeremy, we got this question that I kind of love. It's by Marina. If she wants to jump on at any point, she can ask it too. But Marina asked, is any press is good press? Is that true?
Oh, yeah. So, well, I will say this, that I've worked on a number of movies where there's been tragedy, where there's been marital strife, where there's been epic cost overruns, and none of those things killed the movies. Sometimes that happens, but I've worked on movies that had all those things and went on to be amazing and make tons of money, and people loved them and cried and cheered when that movie happened. The thing that is bad press is bad reviews very early in your cycle. So the best way you can prevent bad PR from becoming the kind of PR that sinks you is your product has to be good. In this world, in this era, 2017 summer, it's harder and harder to make a movie that's subpar and get your money back, right? So if you look at the big franchises right now and how they're earning compared to the previous ones, it's really tough to get around bad reviews. So to me, if the question is like, will something bad on the set kill you? Will creative differences in the fired director kill you? Like, those things don't kill you. The things that kill you are bad reviews early in your cycle, and then the thing we talked about just a second ago with the other fellow, if you have a film that's in a genre where there's people that super know about it and care about it, and especially if it's known intellectual property, so let's talk about Ghost in the Shell. If you start out with people saying this movie is insulting because it's whitewashed. Whether or not everyone believes that, that kind of dialogue early in a movie's lifetime can really sink it. So there's first of all, make a great movie. Second of all, don't piss off people who are the most likely to talk about your product. So if you're, I don't care what you're making the film about, if there's a community that you're representing, make sure you understand what the people in that community are going to think of your film, and don't make a film that's going to make them angry. One, because that's bad, and two, because it's going to hurt you economically.
Yeah, well, that kind of goes to the next question, and I just want all the attendees to know too, if you want to jump on and actually ask him a question, I'm getting a lot of text questions, which is great.
That's okay.
But, yeah, that's totally fine, but if you want to ask him a question in person, if you raise your hand, I can make you a panelist. Okay, this is from Remy, which is kind of what you were already talking about, but I think he wants you to expand a little more. How do you work around leaked information about upcoming movies? Yeah,
so that definitely happens. Every now and then you see a film that has a script leaked, or information about a test screening or things like that. There's really, I gotta say, like, the big studios spend a lot of money and a lot of time trying to make leaks not happen. And then something leaks and everyone freaks out and starts running down the hall like the building's on fire. And it's kind of hard to know which ones help you and which ones hurt you. So I think it's fair to just know that some of those things are going to happen on any production, and stay on your game. It's sort of like, I kind of think there's a good fighting metaphor here, or tennis metaphor. It's like, you got to play your game. If people out in the world are talking about something, the best way to fan those flames of that leak is just keep talking about that leak and saying it's not fair, or it's not true, or it's not representative. Just keep doing what you do. And if you have a good marketing plan, if you have a good publicist, if you have a great movie, if you're doing screenings, if you're doing your work, you'll drown out all that other chit chat.
Oh, great. Yes. Kate, did you have a question? Oh, looks like you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
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 I just wanted to hear about a successful marketing campaign that you helped out with at Paramount that you're especially proud of.
Oh my gosh. Well, my go-to answer is it's always very revealing, probably, of the deficiency of my moral makeup. Some of my favorite movies I've ever been involved with are the Jackass films. So I love working on smart movies. I love working on dramas. I love working on important social issues. But there is a point, 12 hours into your day, where you just want to laugh and you want to be with people that are fun. And never in my career have I worked with people that are more surprising and more fun than the filmmakers of Jackass. And I know, again, it's my moral shortcoming, but I could just watch those films over and over. I would do it for free. And so working on all of them at Paramount has been a ball. The filmmakers are good stand-up guys and gals, and they know their audience, they know what they're doing, and they helped us. Like I was saying earlier, you find that DNA at the middle of a movie, and if you just speak to that, you almost always succeed as best you can. And one of the things that they really encouraged us to do is, Jackass is lo-fi, it's handheld, it's not special effects, it's real guys, it's real laughter, it's real stunts, it's a real warning at the front, don't try this at home. And they helped us figure out that just parroting those great qualities in their franchise was the way to, one, telegraph to their fans that we weren't turning it into a Hollywood thing, we weren't changing it, but also to tell newcomers who are looking for that on-ramp what they're getting into and why it's special. So we ended up using the warning. We used the same song for like 4 movies in a row. We've used all their stunts pretty much cut the way they cut them. And the guys have been fantastic. And there's a lot of filmmakers, I apologize if any of them are on the line right now, but they think what they're doing is like really changing the world, and that's great, and people should have that ambition. The guys at Jackass, if you're not looking and they're next to you, they'll just punch you right in the balls. And if you, I've had the case, I'm not going to say who, but like if you're in your office and you're talking about something and you go on a little too long, you look over and like they're just asleep on the couch. And those are people I want to work with over and over for the rest of my life. So that's one I've particularly enjoyed that actually has really worked.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
You're saying you like real people is what you're saying.
Real people, like I think we all in no matter what our job is or the people we traffic with every day, there's a lot of like kissy cheek fake stuff. And it's nice to just have people tell it like it is and be their true selves and let it all hang out for better or worse. That's refreshing. Authentic. I think we live in an era where people value authenticity, and you got to get it where you can. You got to embrace it when it's in front of you.
Well, and I would add to that, it seems like that's what marketing is trying to do, is be authentic.
Yeah, so I think it's, I think for old dinosaurs like me, the challenge is that we have to embrace a different kind of communication where there was an era that ended probably 10 years ago where through sheer brute force we could make people go to movies because people sat in front of their TVs every night. There wasn't Netflix, there wasn't Amazon, there wasn't YouTube, and people sat and watched network TV. And we could run 30-second TV commercials that they didn't always get up off the couch to avoid, and they didn't always change channels. So we could get inside people's mind space by buying it. And now we have to earn it a lot more. People, if we run ads on YouTube, when it says skip video in 3 seconds, we have to like hook people with something they actually want to see in 3 seconds if we're going to get them to know about our movie. And we have Rotten Tomatoes, we have tons of blogs. We have to like be real to real audience members and get them excited in a authentic way. We can't just like jam them with a multi-million-dollar budget that forces them to watch commercials they don't want to watch.
We have another question from Christian. Christian?
Hey, so I'm wondering, kind of in this era of superhero movies with Marvel and DC, how does a studio like Paramount make itself stand out with the kind of movies that you guys produce?
Yeah, well, it's tough because no one does it better right now than Disney. They figured out, I think this is pretty commonly written about. It's a fantastic story. They figured out before anybody else that the films people were going to see were these kind of mega brands. So they created a home for Marvel, Pixar, and Lucasfilm under the Disney umbrella. And those are the films that are just, they come out and people go. And like we were talking about before, people know what they're getting into. You build a universe where the audience is invested. The people that were like a half a second late to the starting line on that are in tough shape. Like DC is now coming into its own, but for a while that didn't work out. And we've got a couple brands. Some of them are working better than others, but we've still got Transformers and G.I. Joes and Ninja Turtles and things like that. But everybody right now is trying to find what are the next couple of those sort of known intellectual property universes that we can take to the screen in a cool way that people are going to fall in love with for an arc of 5 movies. It's not just, can we just make one silly movie that gets people for one weekend anymore? That's not how, yeah, you can make money on that, and people do, but the way you really succeed at that next level, that stratosphere level, you've got to find that intellectual property. So it's a mad battle in Hollywood and New York and around the world with book publishers and comic books and whatever it is to try to find what are the next versions of that intellectual property, like Disney figured out a little bit before everybody else.
Thanks, Christian. I'm going to go ahead and go to Drew. Go ahead, Drew.
Hey, yeah. Another question for you. Other than the obvious trailer and poster, what other tools are in the filmmaker's marketing toolbox? And kind of a second question to that too is, can you talk a little about publicists and what you'd look for in a publicist, how you'd use them from like an indie film standpoint?
Yeah, so those are 2 very different questions. So one, the tools. The cool thing is, you've got your sort of paid media stuff, you've got publicity, you've got all the traditional things you've seen. But I think the awesome thing right now is people are inventing new tools every day, and a smart marketer with a flair for technology and can go out and find that next tool that everybody else already hasn't saturated. So if you look on Instagram or Snapchat, a lot of advertising money's going there, but now it's like it's filling up with stuff. It's like hard to find your space and make your dent there. So finding that next thing is kind of the key if you're an independent filmmaker to do something that's not publicity. So let me give you an example. About 15 years ago, there was a movie that had sat on a shelf for a while called Paranormal Activity. And Steven Spielberg bought that movie with the intention of remaking it. It was a $10,000 movie made in a suburban tract house. And it like wasn't like a big Hollywood movie, but it had a cool idea that there was this haunting thing that was captured on cameras. So no one really knew how to remake it, and it sat around for a while. And someone at Paramount in our online team came up with the idea that we could do this Demand It technology. And Demand It at that time had not been used for a movie, and Demand It was, I don't even know if it's still around. It probably has morphed a million times. But basically, we could put a trailer up on this site, and if enough people in one place wanted to see that movie and committed, we would do a screening for them. Then they would come out, like the movie, do some buzz, and more people in other cities would ask for screening. They would demand it. So we didn't have to spend tens of millions of dollars to get people to go see the first paranormal movie. We just had to get one happy theater of people to create enough buzz that then we got another theater, and it rolled out city by city, show by show. And that movie went on, the franchise, to make a little short of $1 billion. Right, over the course of all the movies that have come. And it only existed because one person found one technology that no one else had ever used. And I kind of think if you're looking for tools, yeah, everyone knows, yeah, you got to be on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever. But I think the smart people are saying, what's the tool a car company or a beer company or a dating company is using right now that I can be the first person to apply it to a movie? That's the quiver of resources I would be looking for if I were an independent filmmaker. So your second question about publicists, what you look for. So I think there's two things you really want. You want someone who really understands and hopefully either loves or can pretend to love in a convincing way your film. If you have someone who just looks at it like a widget or a ball bearing, that is not your publicist. It's got to be someone who is a evangelist level fan of your film. So if they come see it, they have to walk out and say what it meant to them, why they cried, why they laughed, who they can't wait to show it to. There has to be that enthusiasm. That's one. Number two, we are in an era where I think a publicist without a real serious, substantial, on long-standing list of serious connections is not of value. So it's very hard to be a publicist where you don't know the 10 reviewers or the 10 tastemakers in the area of film you're trying to influence. To cold call people and send them a press release, do that yourself. Get someone who can tell you that they've had a dialogue or 10 emails back and forth on the last movie that was like your movie with the people you want to talk to. Because otherwise you're paying someone to figure out how to do their job as opposed to someone who's going to literally do it at 9 a.m. the morning after they're hired. That's really important because anyone can talk a good game about how they like your movie and who they think it should go to. But for instance, if I want to talk to, Jane Doe at some magazine, I think she's the perfect person to come to a film festival and review it. If I don't know her, it's just not going to happen. If I know her, she's my friend, I've had coffee with her, we worked on a couple movies together in the past, that's what you're paying for, those real existing connections. That's my opinion on publicists.
Thank you, Drew. Okay, I'm going to move you over here. All right. Yes, Hannah.
Hi, Jeremy. How are you?
Hey there.
So my question is, how does an independent film get the attention of Paramount Pictures to get them maybe to sponsor, to get behind it or market it?
Ooh, yeah. So, well, ideally, that independent filmmaker would have a time machine because it's very hard for a big studio to make the money they need to make on an independent film. The acquisition days by big studios are they're dwindling, and they may go away entirely. So, like any independent film, if someone is at Sundance and gets an award and people are cheering and screaming in the theaters, yeah, of course there's going to be a bidding war, and that's great, and maybe it'll go to the Weinsteins, or maybe it'll go to Paramount. But the sort of the old, we made an independent film and we're going to shop it around, it kind of doesn't work that way anymore. The cost basis of marketing films is so high that the studios, by and large, make less and less indie. So there are exceptions. One, you probably have to have like the level of prestige picture where you have that actor or that director who is so famous and so sought after that everyone wants to work with them. Maybe people who've done bigger movies, like we had a movie, Fences, with Denzel Washington, right? And so everyone wants to be in business with Denzel Washington. He's like a national treasure. And if he happened to make an amazing movie that was one of the best movies of the year last year, but if he makes a movie, it's a lot different than if some guy you don't know makes a movie. So it's a tough question because it just doesn't always work the way we remember it just a few short years ago.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you.
All right, we have another question from Christian.
Hey.
One more for you, Jeremy. So kind of related back to that previous question, do you see the movie industry devolving into even more or possibly all of just these kind of blockbuster moneymakers? Or do you think it'll stay balanced between that and more independent art-based films?
So I think the great thing that's very easy to overlook with, like I said something earlier it makes a good point. 7 out of 10 movies, the biggest domestic box office last year, were movies that were based on known intellectual property. But let's just take that off the table and say, for me, just as an average consumer, like 5 out of 10 movies that actually made me super happy last year were little tiny movies. And those are still out there. Even, I don't care if you're in Missoula, Montana or LA, there are people making great livings off of little tiny movies, and they just have to make great movies. So I don't think those are going away. I pray they're not going away, because I don't think we want to just be in a world of superheroes where that's all we get. And then I also will say, I think when you take the very long view of content and how people consume it and what they like, there's nothing that lasts forever. There's no trend that doesn't dissipate. Life is all these little pendulums going in different ways and intersecting. So I think Marvel and DC are having their moment, and that moment's lasting a really long time. But I personally don't believe that that's going to be the thing people are going to be happy about in 10 years. And here's one of the reasons I think that's true. So the straight ahead Marvel movies, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, those movies turned into a universe, which is the Avengers, and everyone's going and everyone's still invested. But now they're actually spinning off movies that are kind of a counterpoint to that. So if you look at Deadpool, that's making fun of the genre. If you look at Guardians of the Galaxy, that's undermining it in a funny way. I think the second you start to see people in the marketplace riffing on it, that kind of means that's a trend that's so established it can't. I don't think it keeps going up. I think it's found its plateau where it's so entrenched in people's minds that now we can make jokes about like the tropes of it, and I think that means that something else will come kick it off that pedestal.
All right, awesome, thanks.
Thanks,
Sure.
Christian. This goes so fast. We are already at the point, but Jeremy offered to stay for just a few minutes after our 45-minute mark. So if anybody else would like kind of a last-ditch question, here is your chance. And
I feel like one of those radio DJs. I'm going to ask for one last request at the end of my shift. I want to take you out with a great song while you're cruising around.
Okay, go ahead. Let's hear you sing. I had one last question.
Yeah.
I was just curious, this is kind of maybe a controversial question, but you hear so much right now in the media about films like Moonlight and films with women directors. And do you find in this studio world that those are hard to promote? Are they becoming more
Yeah.
mainstream? I would love to know, somebody who's right in there in the midst of it, what is that true? What is the deal?
Well, it kind of felt like I just read a statistic that I don't remember how many years ago, but it was like 10 years ago. There had actually been more female directors than there were in the last year, even though we're talking about it more. Um, I, that I think that's I think it's super sad that as a country and as a world, we're becoming more and more progressive. People are marrying, people of their own genders and of different cultures. Young people are going around the world. Like women are, more and more getting on boards and becoming CEOs. And somehow there's these little corners where as much light as we shine on them, they haven't really opened up yet. But that's not my part of the world, hiring people, but I think every one of us who cares has to make it our corner of the world. So I think when I get to hire people, whether it's an agency or an editor or a copywriter, like I think all this discussion is making me more aware that maybe I'm the first step on that ladder up where people are going to go on and run the studio or become directors. And if the world is making me more aware and trying to do a better job, maybe it is just a matter of time. Maybe we are making the right steps, even though it's like evolution. There's fits and starts, and we go forward, then we go backward. I just can't help think that we're going to get there. And I will say one last thing. When I started at Paramount Pictures, which was I think about 22 years ago, the chairman of the studio was a woman, Sherry Lansing. She had an incredibly successful career, and she was one of the first, if not the first, chairman of a studio. And that, like, I was there for that. And I know now that there's other people at other studios who have now followed. And I know that we kind of focus on directors and we focus on what women stars make in movies. And I think that's right. And I think we have to shed more light on that. We have to fight whatever these old forces are that are keeping the change from happening. I heard something today about what Gal Gadot made for Wonder Woman versus the guy in Superman. It's like the fact that all this is in the news, I think, is healthy, and we just all gotta keep pushing. I don't have the answer. I don't know where it's going. I know that I want to be part of the difference, and I'm an old like gray-haired guy. If I want to be part of the difference, then maybe change is coming. Maybe it's getting through everybody's thick skull that we got to do a better job.
Oh, we have another question up here.
Okay.
This is pretty funny. Can you give us an exclusive information about any upcoming Paramount movies?
Oh, I can. I'm going to drop a huge bomb secret, and this is going to blow up the internet. Tomorrow, go see Transformers. It opens. I've been working really hard on it. I've been there for all of them. Everyone gives these movies a bad rap. There's too much action, too much explosions. But when I go see a Transformers movie, I just personally, the reason I go, I love to see a car turn into a robot. I love to see a toaster turn into a killing machine. I can't wait to see what happens next. And this movie's super fun. So my big secret, my bomb, my spoiler is go see Transformers tomorrow.
Awesome. Well, Jeremy, this has been fantastic. Thank you, everybody who attended and asked questions. We are doing this every week through the summer, and we have some great ones coming up that if you go on the Audience Awards, you can find out. Next week, we have Pro 8 that does Super 8 film, and then we have Vice and YouTube and all of that coming up through July and August. And again, this is sponsored by Montana Film Office with the Audience Awards. And Jeremy, you're fantastic. That was
Thanks
great.
for having me. This is great. You're a great moderator and great questions. This was really enjoyable.
Thank you. Well, we hope to keep in contact, and we'll let you know how Transformers is.
All right, great. Thanks. Take care.
Bye, Jeremy. Bye, everybody.